What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. My name is Lucas Wencl, and today we are talking about 10 players that you can look to drop after week 9 of fantasy football to make room for those waiver wire ads ahead of week 10. As always, we'll make sure to talk about guys both in deep leagues and shallow leagues. But before we dive on into that list, if you want a chance at winning a signed Josh Allen Bills helmet for free, courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com, all you need to do is head to fantasypros.com/contest, complete the form, and either download the Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard app, leave a review for the podcast, or follow us on X, Instagram, or TikTok at Fantasy Pros. The more actions you complete, the more entries you receive. We'll be announcing a winner right here on the podcast, so if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to come claim your prize when we announce it. Kicking off our list this week is Minnesota Vikings running back Ty Chandler. Ever since the Cam Akers trade, Chandler has seen minimal playing time at best. Since the team's Week 6 bye, Chandler's snap shares have dipped from 18% to 4% and now to 0 snaps on Sunday Night Football against the Colts. It was Cam Akers who stepped in when Aaron Jones came off the field, totaling 53 yards on 8 touches, while averaging over 7 yards per carry on the ground. For whatever reason, the Vikings don't care to have Chandler involved in the offense right now, which obviously kills his value entirely. You likely have been stashing him as a handcuff for Aaron Jones, but it appears he lost that role to Cam Akers and would split time with Akers at best if anything were to happen to Aaron Jones. The next player you can look to drop this week is Ezekiel Elliott, running back for the Dallas Cowboys. I really don't know what we're waiting for here. The fact Zeke is still rostered in over 20% of Yahoo leagues and over 30% of ESPN leagues is bewildering to me. We've already seen what it looks like when Zeke has the opportunity to be the lead dog in this backfield. It's 3.4 yards per carry on 10 totes and a hopeful tumble into the end zone to barely finish as a top 30 back. Rico Dowdle is clearly the best back in this backfield and should have solidified his running back 1 status on this team on Sunday after totaling 107 yards on 17 touches. Dallas has also showed they're willing to bring up Dalvin Cook from the practice squad, and I wouldn't be surprised if the team went out and acquired another back before the trade deadline. Zeke is dead weight on your roster, plain and simple, and you should move on from him at this point. The third player on our list is Green Bay Packers wide receiver Dontayvion Wicks. Unfortunately, Wicks has now made this list in back-to-back weeks after giving you a goose egg on Sunday against the Lions. Albeit, it was poor weather in Green Bay, but the drops are plaguing his production. Those drops can't keep happening as he continues to be 4th in the pecking order behind Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, and Christian Watson. They all played more snaps and ran more routes than Wicks per usual. The unfortunate reality with Wicks is that he's given you 6 finishes as the wide receiver 70 or worse this year. And now with the Packers going into their Week 10 bye, he's an easy player to part ways with if you need to open up a roster spot. Coming in next is Baltimore Ravens tight end Isaiah Likely. This one may be painful for some managers who spent heavy fab on Likely after his Week 1 performance against the Chiefs, but it's been ugly ever since. He's only given you 2 games with more than 5 fantasy points since Week 2, and only has 1 finish inside of the top 20 tight ends during that stretch. Likely played fewer snaps than both Mark Andrews and Charlie Kolar this week, as the Ravens rolled out less 22 personnel sets according to Nathan Yonke of PFF. This could be because of the Deontay Johnson trade, but it's definitely not a point in favor of Isaiah Likely at the very least. You can do much better than Likely at the tight end position, so it's time to bite the bullet and send him back to the waiver wire. Our next player that you can drop this week is Jerome Ford, running back for the Cleveland Browns. Ford made his return in Week 9 and actually led this Browns backfield in snaps. He played 36 snaps to Chubb's 28, but it was Chubb who got the 16 opportunities to Jerome Ford's 4. It appears that Ford's role going forward could be in the likes of the passing game, as he ran 30 routes on his 36 snaps. Unfortunately, running routes doesn't get you fantasy points even though Ford was out on the field more often. As long as Nick Chubb is soaking up all the rushing work for this offense, Ford's fantasy value is severely capped. The Browns are also going into their Week 10 bye, which makes Ford an easier player to part ways with to free up some flexibility on your roster. Another running back you can look to part ways with is Devin Singletary of the New York Giants. It's now solidified that Tyrone Tracy has overtaken Singletary as the running back 1 in this offense, and he may not be giving that role up anytime soon. Tracy has been given 39 touches over the last 2 weeks compared to Singletary's 12. Tracy has capitalized on those for 219 yards while averaging 5.8 yards per carry. The schedule coming up is nice for the Giants running backs, getting Carolina, Tampa, Dallas, and New Orleans in their next 4 games, but when this backfield is so lopsided in Tracy's favor, it may not make a difference for Singletary. In shallow leagues, Singletary may be an easy cut candidate with 4 teams going on bye in week 10, and you can feel free to do so if you need to shake up your roster. We have a lot of running backs on our list this week, and the next one is Alexander Mattison of the Las Vegas Raiders. I know it's only one down week for Mattison after scoring only 3.6 fantasy points against the Bengals, but I'm not sold he retains the lead back role for the Raiders. It's not like he was blowing people away with his performances. He only had one game with more than 40 rushing yards between weeks 5 through 9, despite getting fed 75 attempts, which was the 12th most in the league during that stretch. In week 9, we started to see Zamir White factor back in as well with 6 carries to Madison's 9. Another important observation from Nathan Yonke at PFF is that Amir Abdullah is the team's preferred back when the team is down by 2+ scores. Again, in a shallow league, Mattison may be easier to part with now considering he's entering his bye week. If you want to keep him rostered through the bye, I get it, but if you need the roster spot, you can consider sending Mattison to the waiver wire. Another tight end you can consider dropping is Kmet of the Chicago Bears. Kmet has made me look silly before back in week 3, but if we're being honest, that was one of only 2 good games for him this year. Outside of finishing as the overall tight end 1 with 24 fantasy points against the Jaguars in week 6, Kmet hasn't finished higher than the tight end 17 and has 5 additional finishes outside of the top 20 tight ends. This Bears passing attack is incredibly difficult to trust with Shane Waldron at the helm, and it may be unpredictable which weeks you can slot Kmet in for a top 10 to 12 finish. You can likely do better than Kmet at tight end, so give yourself the freedom to surf the waiver wire and utilize Kmet's roster spot in a better way. Up next on our drop list is Cincinnati Bengals running back Zack Moss. Moss sat out in week 9 due to a neck injury, which opened up the door for Chase Brown to have a monster day. Brown was given 32 opportunities and piled up 157 total yards while finding the end zone on top of it. That all led to 26.7 fantasy points as the running back 4 on the week prior to Monday Night Football. Yes, the Raiders, they are an exploitable matchup, but it might be Jover for Zack Moss, whose role in this offense was already trending in the wrong direction. Moss has only had one weekly finish better than the running back 40 since week 4, and that trend will likely continue if Chase Brown continues proving his worth. Again, if you're in a shallow league, Moss is an easy one to part ways with as, once again, 4 teams are going on bye in week 10. And lastly, unless if you're playing in a 2-quarterback or superflex league, you can look to part ways with Caleb Williams of the Chicago Bears. Prior to the team's week 7 bye, Caleb Williams seemed to be figuring a few things out. He finished as the quarterback 6 against the Panthers in week 5, while finishing as the quarterback 1 overall against the Jaguars in week 6. That being said, it was against the Panthers and Jaguars, 2 of the worst pass defenses in the entire league. Even coming out after the bye though, Williams has faced 2 exploitable secondaries in Washington and Arizona, but hasn't scored more than 10 fantasy points in either game. On the season, Williams has double the amount of games outside of the top 20 quarterbacks as he does inside of the top 12. At this point, Caleb isn't in the weekly starter consideration and is a streaming option at best until further notice, so you can send him to the waiver wire and find a new quarterback to stream for week 10. Alrighty y'all, that is it. That's all I've got for you today, but before we sign off here, remember, if you want a chance at winning a signed Josh Allen Bills helmet for free, courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com, all you need to do is head to fantasypros.com/contest, complete the form, and either download the Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard app, leave a review for the podcast, or follow us on X, Instagram, or TikTok at Fantasy Pros. The more actions you complete, the more entries you receive. We'll be announcing a winner right here on the podcast, so if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to come claim your prize when we announce it.